The rain fell hard on the broken streets of Denver. Jake Patterson stood in the shadows of a collapsed building, watching the alien patrol pass by. Their blue armor glowed softly in the darkness. He counted 6 of them, walking in perfect formation like they owned the place. And they did own it. They had owned Earth for 15 years now. Jake pressed his hand against the cold wall and waited. His breath came out in small clouds. Winter was coming early this year, or maybe it just felt that way. Everything felt worse since the Galactic Council arrived. They had promised peace and progress. They had promised to guide humanity into a better future. But all Jake saw was control and chains. "Commander, they're past the checkpoint," a voice whispered in his ear. It was Amy Sullivan, his second in command. She was 3 blocks away, hidden in an old apartment building with their scanner equipment. "Copy that," Jake whispered back. "How many more patrols tonight?" 2 more in the next hour. Then the shift changes. Jake nodded to himself. The council kept strict schedules. They were predictable, which was good. Predictable enemies made mistakes. He moved carefully through the rubble, keeping low and quiet. His team was scattered across the district, all watching and waiting. Tonight they would hit a council supply truck. Nothing big, just enough to send a message. He thought about the old days sometimes. Back when he flew jets for the Air Force. Back when humans controlled their own skies. That felt like another lifetime now. The council had taken everything. They controlled the governments, the armies, the cities. They said it was for humanity's own good. They said humans were too dangerous, too violent, too primitive to be trusted with advanced technology. Jake reached the meeting point, an old subway entrance that led down into the tunnels. 3 of his people were already there. Danny Cruz, a former mechanic who could fix anything. Linda Hayes, who had been a school teacher before the occupation. And Kevin Price, barely 20 years old, who had never known a free Earth. "Everything ready?" Jake asked. Danny nodded and patted a large bag. "Charges are set. We blow the junction box, their whole grid goes dark for 6 blocks. Good. Linda, you got the route mapped?" Linda pulled out a hand-drawn map. Paper maps were safer than digital ones. The council monitored all electronic signals. Truck comes down 5th Street at 2200 hours. Takes the turn at the old plaza. That's where we hit them. Jake studied the map. It was risky. The plaza was open ground. But it was also far from the nearest council garrison. They would have maybe 4 minutes before reinforcements arrived. 4 minutes to grab what they could and disappear. "Kevin, you're on lookout. Any sign of trouble, you signal and we abort." "Understood." The young man nodded. His hands were shaking slightly. Jake put a hand on his shoulder. "You'll do fine. Just stay sharp." They moved through the tunnels in silence. The underground was their sanctuary, a maze of passages that the council had never fully mapped. Down here, humans could still move freely. Down here, they could still fight back. Jake's mind drifted to the bigger picture. Resistance cells like his existed in every major city, Tokyo, London, Cairo, São Paulo, all fighting the same fight. But they were scattered, uncoordinated. The council had made sure of that. They had destroyed the old communication networks. They had isolated humanity, broken them into small pieces that could never come together. But maybe that was changing. Last month, Jake had made contact with a cell in Seattle. Before that, one in Mexico City. Slowly, carefully, they were building connections. If they could unite, if they could coordinate their attacks, maybe they could actually hurt the council. Maybe they could show humanity that resistance was possible. The tunnel opened up into a maintenance room beneath the plaza. Through a ventilation grate, Jake could see the street above. It was empty now. The council had imposed a curfew. Anyone caught outside after dark faced imprisonment or worse. Amy's voice crackled in his ear again. "Jake, I'm picking up a transmission. Council frequency. They're talking about something called the pruning protocol." "What's that?" Jake asked. "I don't know. Never heard of it before, but they're sending a big shipment off-world in 3 days. The transmission mentioned the protocol in relation to it." Jake filed that information away. Everything the council did was worth noting. Every detail could be useful. "Keep monitoring. Let me know if you hear anything else." The minutes ticked by slowly. Jake watched the street through the grate. The others waited in silence, checking their equipment one last time. Danny had his tools ready. Linda gripped her stunner, a crude weapon they had built from salvaged parts. Kevin was at the tunnel entrance, eyes fixed on his watch. Then they heard it. The low hum of the supply truck's engine. The council vehicles were nearly silent, but in the dead quiet of curfew, even a whisper carried. "Positions," Jake ordered. Danny climbed up to the grate, his fingers working quickly to remove it. Linda crouched beside him, ready to move. Jake pulled out his own weapon, a projectile gun from before the occupation. Old technology, but it worked. The truck appeared at the end of the street. It moved slowly, its anti-gravity field making it float a foot above the ground. 2 guards sat in the front. No visible weapons, but Jake knew they carried energy rifles. Those could burn through concrete. "Now," Jake said. Danny pressed a button. 6 blocks away, the junction box exploded. The streetlights died. Emergency lights flickered on, but they were dim, barely enough to see. The truck slowed down, its driver confused by the sudden darkness. Jake and his team burst from the underground. They moved fast, surrounding the truck. Linda fired her stunner at the driver. The bolt of electricity hit him and he slumped forward. Danny was already at the back of the truck working on the lock. 30 seconds. Kevin's voice came through the radio. The lock clicked open. Danny pulled the doors wide. Inside were crates marked with council symbols. Medical supplies mostly, some food packages. Not weapons, unfortunately, but still valuable. People needed these things. "Grab what you can," Jake ordered. They worked quickly, pulling crates out and passing them down into the tunnel. Kevin kept counting down the time. 2 minutes. Sirens in the distance. The second guard was starting to wake up. Jake moved to him and pressed his gun against the alien's head. "Stay down. Don't make me do something we'll both regret." The alien looked at him with large, dark eyes. For a moment, Jake almost felt sorry for him. These guards were just following orders, just doing their jobs. But then he remembered what the council had done to Earth. He remembered the cities that had resisted and been bombed into dust. He remembered the humans who had been taken away for re-education and never came back. 3 minutes, Kevin warned. "That's enough," Jake said. "Move out." They disappeared back into the tunnel, dragging the last crates with them. Danny sealed the grate behind them. By the time the council reinforcements arrived, the street would be empty. Just a disabled truck and 2 confused guards. The team moved through the tunnels quickly, taking different routes to confuse any pursuers. Jake carried 2 crates on his shoulders, his muscles burning from the weight. But he smiled. It was a small victory, but it was still a victory. Back at their hideout, deep in the abandoned subway system, they unpacked their haul. Medical supplies would go to the underground clinics. Food would go to families in hiding. Every item they took from the council was one less tool of control. Amy was waiting for them, her face serious. "Jake, you need to hear this. I recorded more of that transmission. The pruning protocol. I think it's something bad. Really bad." Jake set down his crates. "How bad?" "I'm not sure yet. But they mentioned a list, names, human names, and they talked about elimination procedures." A cold feeling settled in Jake's chest. He had feared something like this. The council had been too patient, too methodical. They were planning something. "Get Nathan," Jake said, referring to Dr. Nathan Brooks, their resident scientist and hacker. "If there's data about this protocol, we need to find it. Whatever the council is planning, we need to know." Amy nodded and hurried off. Jake looked around at his team. They were tired, dirty, and scared. But they were still fighting. As long as humans kept fighting, there was hope. Outside, in the darkness above, council ships patrolled the skies. They thought they had won. They thought humanity was beaten. They were wrong. Dr. Nathan Brooks stared at the computer screen, his eyes red from lack of sleep. He had been working for 3 days straight, trying to crack the encrypted files Jake's team had stolen from the council data facility in Chicago. The raid had been messy. 2 good people had died getting this information. Nathan owed it to them to make it count. The facility raid had happened fast. Amy had led the team in through a maintenance entrance while council guards were changing shifts. They had maybe 90 seconds inside before the alarms went off. Amy had grabbed everything she could, copying files onto a portable drive while explosions echoed through the building. She barely made it out. Now Nathan sat in the dim light of their underground hideout, his fingers flying across the keyboard. The council's encryption was sophisticated, but it had patterns. Everything had patterns if you looked long enough. And Nathan had been looking for 72 hours. "Anything yet?" Jake asked, bringing him a cup of coffee. Real coffee was rare these days. Most people drank synthetic substitutes. "Maybe," Nathan said, not looking away from the screen. Their encryption rotates every 6 hours, but there's a mathematical constant they use as a base. If I can isolate it, I might be able to. The screen flickered. Lines of code transformed into readable text. Nathan's breath caught in his throat. "I'm in," he whispered. Jake leaned closer. "What does it say?" Nathan opened the first file. It was a historical document, written in the Council's formal language but automatically translated by his computer. He began reading aloud, his voice growing quieter with each sentence. The Pruning Protocol, established in Council Year 4782. Purpose: to maintain galactic stability and prevent the rise of potentially dangerous civilizations. Method: systematic identification and elimination of key individuals within subject populations who demonstrate exceptional leadership, scientific innovation, or cultural influence. Jake's face went pale. "They're killing people?" "Not just killing," Nathan said, scrolling through more files. "They're targeting anyone who might lead a species to independence. Scientists, engineers, military leaders, artists, teachers, anyone who might inspire others or create something new." More files opened on the screen. Lists of names. Human names. Nathan recognized some of them. Dr. Sarah Kim, the physicist who had been working on clean energy before she disappeared last year. General Marcus Stone, who had vanished after speaking out against council policies. Maria Santos, the writer whose books about human dignity had been banned. "They've been doing this for 15 years, Nathan said, his hands shaking. Every time someone got too influential, too creative, too dangerous to their control, they just made them disappear. Jake pulled up a chair and sat down hard. "How many?" Nathan ran a search query. The number that came back made him feel sick. "Over 10,000. Just on Earth, and that's only counting the ones they've already eliminated." "Already eliminated," Jake repeated. "That means there's more planned." Nathan opened another file. This one was recent, dated just 2 weeks ago. It was a list of names scheduled for the next phase of pruning. The list was organized by priority level. At the very top, marked as critical threats, were 3 names: Jake Patterson, Nathan Brooks, Amy Sullivan. "We're on the list," Nathan said quietly. Jake stood up and paced the small room. "How long do we have?" "According to this, the next pruning phase begins in 6 months. But high-priority targets get moved up. We could be looking at weeks, maybe less, and we need to warn people. Everyone needs to know what the Council is doing." Nathan nodded. "I can broadcast this. Send it to every independent network still operating on Earth. But the moment we do, the Council will track the signal. They'll know exactly where we are. Then we'll have to move fast," Jake said. "Get everyone ready to evacuate. As soon as that broadcast goes out, we run." Over the next few hours, the hideout became a flurry of activity. Jake called in everyone he could reach. Amy arrived with her intelligence team. Danny started packing equipment. Linda organized supplies for a quick escape. Kevin and the younger fighters prepared weapons and planned escape routes through the tunnels. Nathan worked on the broadcast. He compiled the most damning evidence: the pruning protocol documents, the lists of names, the historical records showing the Council had done this to dozens of other species over thousands of years. He wrote a simple message to go with it. "To all humans still living free, the Galactic Council has been systematically murdering our brightest minds for 15 years. They call it the pruning protocol. They do it to keep us weak, to keep us controllable. This is not guidance. This is genocide. We are scheduled to be pruned in 6 months. Unless we stand together and fight back, humanity will slowly be erased. Not through bombs or weapons, but through the quiet elimination of anyone who dares to dream of freedom." He showed the message to Jake. The commander read it twice, then nodded. "Send it." "Once I do this, there's no going back," Nathan warned. "There was no going back the moment they occupied our planet," Jake replied. "Send it." Nathan pressed the button. The broadcast went out on every frequency he could access: radio, television, internet, satellite. The message would reach millions of humans across the globe. For maybe 10 minutes before the Council shut down the networks, people would see the truth. In the hideout, everyone waited. The air felt thick with tension. Amy stood by the exit, watching the tunnel entrance. Danny had his tools ready. Linda held her stunner with white knuckles. "How long until they find us?" Jake asked. "They're triangulating the signal now," Nathan said, watching his monitors. "I'm bouncing it through a dozen relay points, but they're fast. Maybe 5 minutes." 5 minutes felt like 5 seconds. Nathan watched as the council's tracking systems closed in on their location. He could see it on his screen, a red circle growing smaller and smaller, centering on the exact spot where they hid. "They know," he said. "Everyone out now!" The team moved. They had practiced this evacuation a dozen times. Everyone grabbed their pre-packed bags and headed for the tunnels. Jake went last, making sure no one was left behind. Nathan shut down the computers and grabbed the hard drives containing the evidence. They were 50 feet into the tunnel when the first explosion hit. The hideout they had just left erupted in flames. Council forces were using thermal charges, trying to collapse the tunnels and trap them inside. "Keep moving," Jake shouted. The team ran through the darkness, their flashlights bouncing off the tunnel walls. Behind them, more explosions echoed. The council was being thorough. They wanted to make sure no one survived. The tunnel split into 3 directions. Jake made a quick decision. "We split up. Amy, take Kevin and Danny, head east. Linda, Nathan, come with me, we go north. Meet at the secondary location if you can. If not, scatter and survive." Amy didn't argue. In situations like this, hesitation got people killed. She grabbed Kevin and Danny and disappeared into the eastern tunnel. Jake led Nathan and Linda north, running as fast as they could manage while carrying their equipment. After 20 minutes of running, they stopped to catch their breath. Nathan's legs burned and his lungs felt like fire. He wasn't built for this kind of physical activity. He was a scientist, not a soldier. "Do you think the message got through?" Linda asked between gasps for air. "It got through," Nathan said. "The question is whether anyone will believe it." Jake checked his radio. Static. The council was jamming all frequencies now. They were alone, cut off from the rest of the team. "We keep moving. Find a safe place to hide for a few hours, then try to re-establish contact." They walked through the tunnels for another hour, before finding an old maintenance room that looked abandoned. Jake checked it carefully before letting them enter. It was cold and damp, but it was shelter. Nathan set up a small computer, running it on battery power. He couldn't access the main networks, but he could scan for local signals. What he found made him smile. "Jake, look at this." The screen showed dozens of localized networks popping up across the city. People were talking about the broadcast. They were sharing the information, spreading it person to person, and they were angry. "It's happening," Nathan said. "People are waking up." Jake watched the data scroll across the screen. For 15 years, most humans had accepted the occupation. They had believed the council's lies about guidance and protection. But now they knew the truth. Now they understood what was really happening. "This changes everything," Jake said. "If people know what the council is doing, they'll fight back." "They have to." Linda sat against the wall, her face thoughtful. "But what can we do? The council has ships, weapons, armies. What do we have?" "We have the truth," Jake said. "And we have something the council has never understood about humans. We don't stay down. You can knock us over, you can hurt us, you can try to break us. But we get back up. Every single time." Nathan saved the data and shut down the computer. They would rest here for a few hours, then try to reach the secondary location. With luck, Amy and the others had made it there safely. Outside, somewhere above them in the streets of Denver, council forces were searching. They would keep searching, but the message was out now. Millions of humans knew about the pruning protocol. And that knowledge, Jake thought, was the first step toward freedom. He settled into a corner of the maintenance room and closed his eyes. Tomorrow they would continue the fight. The team split into 3 groups. Each had a target. Danny's group headed for the station's main power core. Kevin led a squad to the weapons storage bay. Jake and Amy moved toward the command center, where they hoped to find information about the council's plans. The station's corridors were clean and sterile, lit by soft blue lights. Council personnel scattered as Jake's team advanced. Most were administrators, not soldiers. They had never expected a human attack this far from Earth's surface. "Left corridor," Amy said, checking the map Kraz had provided. "Command center should be 200 meters ahead." They ran through the station, their boots echoing on metal floors. Behind them, alarms began to sound. The council was responding now, sending security forces to stop the intruders. But Jake's team had surprise and momentum on their side. They reached the command center to find it sealed behind a heavy blast door. Danny's EMP weapons wouldn't work on purely mechanical locks. They needed another approach. "Stand back," Jake said, pulling out a block of plastic explosive. "We do this the old-fashioned way." The explosion tore through the door, revealing the command center beyond. Council officers dove for cover. Jake's team moved in quickly, securing the room. One alien, taller than the others and wearing elaborate robes, stood defiantly in the center. "I am Executor Venn," the alien said. His voice was cold and arrogant. "You have made a terrible mistake, human. This station cannot be taken by a handful of primitives." "We don't need to take it," Jake said. "We just need what's in your computers, Amy." Amy was already at a terminal, her fingers flying across the alien interface. "I'm in. Downloading everything I can find. Wait, there's something here about Earth, a file marked priority urgent." "What does it say?" Jake demanded. Amy's face went pale as she read. "It's a deployment order. The Council is sending a biological weapon to Earth. They're planning to release it in major population centers. It's designed to reduce human population to manageable levels. They estimate it will kill 80% of everyone on the planet." The room went silent. Even Executor Venn seemed uncomfortable, looking away rather than meeting Jake's eyes. "When?" Jake asked, his voice barely a whisper. 2 weeks, Amy said. "The weapon is being prepared at the Council's headquarters facility in Geneva. Once it's ready, they'll deploy it immediately." Jake felt rage burning in his chest. Not just anger, but a deep, consuming fury. They weren't content to prune humanity slowly. They were going to wipe out billions of people in one strike. "Copy everything," he told Amy. "Every file, every plan, every piece of evidence. We're broadcasting this across the entire galaxy." "You cannot stop this," Venn said. "The Council has decided. Humanity is too dangerous, too unpredictable. You have proven this with your rebellion. The biological weapon will restore order." Jake crossed the room in 3 steps and grabbed Venn by his robes. "You're coming with us. You're going to confess everything on camera. Every species in Council space is going to know what the Archons have done." Danny's voice crackled over the radio. "Jake, we've planted the devices on the power core. Station's going dark in 30 seconds. Good, everyone fall back to the ship. We're leaving." The team retreated through the corridors, dragging Venn with them. Council security forces tried to block their path, but Kevin's squad had secured the route. They fought their way back to the docking bay, losing 3 fighters in the process. Every loss hurt, but they couldn't stop to mourn. Not yet. As they reached the transport ship, the station's lights flickered and died. Nathan's devices had worked. The entire orbital station was powerless. It would take hours for the Council to restore systems, more than enough time to escape. The ship detached and dove toward Earth. Behind them, the station hung dark and silent against the stars. A monument to humanity's first major victory in space. Back on the surface, Jake's team regrouped at a secure location in the Rocky Mountains. Other resistance leaders gathered to hear what they had found. Greg Hamilton was there, along with representatives from cells in Asia, Africa, and South America. This was no longer just Denver's fight. It was humanity's fight. Amy set up a broadcasting station. She had copied terabytes of data from the station's computers, evidence of the pruning protocol, plans for the biological weapon, communications between Archons discussing the human problem and its final solution. But the most damning evidence was Executor Venn himself. Jake stood the alien in front of a camera and asked him simple questions. At first, Venn refused to speak. But when Jake played recordings of the Archon's own words describing humans as vermin that needed to be exterminated, something broke in the Executor. "They promised us peace," Venn said quietly. The Archon said joining the Council would bring stability and prosperity. But all they brought was control and death. I implemented their orders because I believed in the mission. But I was wrong. We were all wrong. The confession was powerful. A high-ranking Council official admitting to genocide. Amy packaged it with all the evidence and prepared to broadcast. "Once this goes out, every species in Council space will know what the Archons have done," she said. "It might turn public opinion against them." "It better do more than that," Greg said. "We need allies, real ones. Ships, weapons, soldiers. Opinion won't stop a biological weapon." Jake pulled up a communication channel. A Viridian symbol appeared on the screen. Then Krause's face materialized. "Jake Patterson, you attacked the orbital station. Bold. We got evidence, Krause. Proof of the Archon's plans to commit genocide. We're about to broadcast it to the galaxy. How will your people respond?" Krause's expression was hard to read, but his eyes seemed to glow with intensity. "If what you say is true, the Viridian fleet will not stand idle. We honor strength, but we do not honor massacre. Send me your evidence. If it proves what you claim, we will act. Over the next few hours, Amy sent the data to Liberation Front contacts across the galaxy. The broadcast went live at midnight, transmitted on every frequency humanity could access. The images, the audio, the documents all laid bare for everyone to see. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Protests erupted on Council worlds. Species that had never questioned the Archons demanded answers. The Viridian fleet, 300 ships strong, declared they would no longer follow Council orders. Other species joined them. The Liberation Front transformed from a secret coalition into an open rebellion. But the Archons weren't surrendering. They dispatched their personal fleet to Earth, determined to deploy the biological weapon before losing control entirely. 200 warships, the most powerful vessels in Council space, left the Archon homeworld and set course for human territory. They'll be here in 3 days, Nathan reported, tracking the fleet's movement. If they reach Earth, nothing we have can stop them. Then we have to hit them first, Lisa said. She had been quiet since the orbital station raid, planning her next move. The biological weapon is being prepared in Geneva. We know exactly where it is. If we can destroy it before the Archon fleet arrives, they'll have nothing to deploy. The facility will be heavily guarded, Greg warned. They know we know about the weapon. They'll be expecting an attack. So we give them what they expect, Jake said, an idea forming. We hit them with everything we have. A full assault, all our forces on Geneva. While they're busy with that, a small team infiltrates the facility and destroys the weapon. That's sending our people into a meat grinder, Greg said. Hundreds will die. Billions will die if we do nothing, Jake replied. I'll lead the assault personally. You and Lisa handle the infiltration. Get in, destroy the weapon, get out. They planned through the night. Every resistance cell on Earth received orders to converge on Geneva. It would be humanity's largest military operation since the Council arrived. Thousands of fighters armed with Nathan's EMP weapons and old Earth firearms moving toward a single target. Meanwhile, in orbit above Earth, something unexpected happened. The Viridian fleet arrived early, led by Cross himself aboard a massive battleship. But they weren't alone. Behind them came ships from a dozen other species. The Liberation Front had become a liberation armada. Humans. Cross's voice broadcast across all channels. We stand with you. Not because the Council commands it, but because it is right. The Archons have corrupted everything the Council was meant to be. Today we take it back. Jake felt something he hadn't felt in 15 years. Hope. Real, genuine hope. They weren't alone anymore. They had allies. They had a chance. The assault on Geneva began at dawn. Jake led 10,000 fighters toward the Council's facility. Council forces met them with energy weapons and armored vehicles. The battle was brutal and chaotic. Humans fell by the dozens, but they kept pushing forward. Every meter of ground was paid for in blood. While the battle raged, Greg and Lisa led their infiltration team through underground tunnels. They emerged inside the facility's perimeter, moving quickly through hallways filled with scientists and guards. Nathan's EMP devices cleared their path. They found the biological weapon in a sealed laboratory, contained in dozens of metal canisters. Each one held enough poison to kill millions. Lisa began placing explosive charges while Greg's team held the door. Above the planet, the Archon fleet arrived. 200 warships against the Liberation Armada's 500. The broadcast changed everything. Within 24 hours, protests erupted in every major city on Earth. Millions of people who had lived quietly under Council rule now poured into the streets. They carried signs written in dozens of languages, all saying the same thing: humanity would not be pruned. Jake watched the protests from a rooftop in Seattle, 3,000 miles from where he had started. The journey had taken 4 days, moving through underground networks and hidden paths. Amy, Danny, and Kevin had made it to the secondary location. So had dozens of other resistance fighters from across the region. Their small cell was growing into something larger. It's incredible, Amy said, standing beside him. Below them, thousands of humans marched through the streets, chanting and singing. Council guards tried to control the crowd, but they were overwhelmed by sheer numbers. I never thought I'd see something like this. They're angry, Jake said. They finally understand what's been done to them. A man approached from behind. He was older, maybe 60, with gray hair and scars across his face. Colonel Greg Hamilton had been running his own resistance group in the Pacific Northwest for years. His fighters were experienced, disciplined, and ready for war. Your broadcast stirred up a hornet's nest, Greg said. Half the planet is in open rebellion. The Council doesn't know how to respond. They're used to quiet compliance, not this. Will it be enough? Jake asked. Greg shrugged. Anger is good. It gets people moving. But anger alone doesn't win wars. We need weapons, strategy, coordination. Right now we have brave people with rocks facing aliens with energy rifles. That math doesn't work in our favor. Jake knew he was right. The protests were inspiring, but the Council had superior technology and military training. Unless something changed, the rebellion would be crushed. I might have something, a voice called out. Dr. Nathan Brooks emerged from the stairwell carrying a metal case. He looked exhausted but excited. I've been working on this since we got here. It's not perfect, but it works. He opened the case to reveal a device about the size of a shoebox. Wires and circuits covered its surface, all connected to a central power core. It's an electromagnetic pulse emitter. Generates a directed field that disrupts Council technology without harming living tissue. You built an EMP weapon? Amy asked, leaning closer. A focused one, Nathan corrected. Regular EMPs spread in all directions and fry everything electronic. This one creates a beam, pointed at a Council ship or weapon, pull the trigger and it shuts down, temporarily at least, maybe 5 to 10 minutes before their systems reboot. Jake picked up the device carefully. It was heavier than it looked. How many of these can you make? With the right supplies and help, maybe a dozen per week. It's not enough to arm everyone, but it's a start. It's more than a start, Greg said, his eyes lighting up. This evens the playing field. If we can disable their weapons even for a few minutes, we can fight them hand to hand, and humans are good at that. Over the next week, Nathan set up a workshop in an abandoned factory. Other scientists and engineers from the Resistance joined him. Together, they began mass-producing the EMP devices. It was slow work, each unit requiring careful assembly and testing, but the weapons worked. Meanwhile, Amy worked on a different front. She had discovered that not all aliens in the Council supported what was happening on Earth. Some species within the Council were uncomfortable with the pruning protocol. They had joined the Council believing it was a force for peace, not genocide. One group in particular caught her attention. The Viridians were a reptilian species known throughout the galaxy for their strict honor codes. According to the intelligence Amy had gathered, many Viridians were disturbed by the revelation of the pruning protocol. Their culture valued strength and direct confrontation. The idea of quietly eliminating unarmed civilians violated their sense of honor. Amy arranged a secret meeting with a Viridian ambassador named Kraz. They met in a neutral location, an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Seattle. Jake insisted on coming along, despite Amy's protests that he was too high-profile a target. Kraz arrived alone, as agreed. He was 7 feet tall with green scales and yellow eyes. He wore no armor, another sign of good faith. When he spoke, his voice was deep and rough, like gravel grinding together. You are the human called Jake Patterson, Kraz said. It wasn't a question. I am, Jake replied. And you're risking a lot by meeting with us. Risk is part of honor, Kraz said. When I learned of the pruning protocol, I was ashamed. My people joined the Council to bring order to the galaxy, not to murder innocents. What has been done to your species is wrong. Can you help us? Amy asked. Kraz was quiet for a moment. There are others like me. Viridians, yes, but also members of other species. We have formed a coalition. We call ourselves the Liberation Front. Our goal is to reform the Council or, if necessary, replace it entirely. How many are in this front? Jake asked. Thousands across dozens of worlds. Maybe more. It is difficult to know for certain. We must operate in secret like you. What can you offer us? Information, technology, supplies, and when the time comes, military support. But we must move carefully. The Archons who control the Council are powerful and ruthless. If they discover our movement too soon, they will crush us. Jake and Kraz talked for over an hour, establishing the basics of cooperation. The Liberation Front would provide intelligence about Council movements and weaknesses. In return, humanity would continue its resistance, keeping the Council's attention focused on Earth, while the Liberation Front built its strength. As Kraz prepared to leave, he turned back to Jake. Your species is unusual. Most civilizations, when faced with overwhelming force, surrender. But humans keep fighting, even when victory seems impossible. The Archons underestimated you. That may be their downfall. With weapons from Nathan and support from the Liberation Front, The resistance began winning battles, small victories at first, a supply convoy captured here, a council outpost overrun there, but each victory brought more people to the cause. Soldiers who had surrendered years ago found their uniforms and weapons. Civilians learned to fight. The resistance became an army. Jake found himself commanding forces larger than anything he had imagined. Thousands of fighters looked to him for orders. It was overwhelming, but he couldn't show doubt. Leaders had to be confident even when they felt terrified. One night, a message came through from Lisa Martinez. She commanded the Resistance's naval operations, a small fleet of boats and submarines that had been hitting Council shipping lanes. Her message was urgent. "Jake, we've got a situation. Council Orbital Station is preparing a major weapons shipment. Intelligence says they're bringing in heavy artillery, something they haven't used on Earth yet. If those weapons make it to the surface, our fighters won't stand a chance." Jake pulled up a map of the region. The Council's orbital station hung 200 miles above Earth, unreachable by any human technology. Or at least it had been unreachable. "Nathan, how fast can you modify those EMP devices to work in space?" The scientist looked up from his workbench. "Space? Jake, those devices weren't designed for vacuum conditions. The power systems would need complete redesign. The emitters would need shielding, and I'd have to account for radiation exposure." "How fast?" Jake repeated. Nathan sighed. 3 days maybe, if I don't sleep and everything goes perfectly." "You have 2 days," Jake said. "Lisa, start planning an assault on that station. We're going to need a captured Council transport ship to get up there. Find me one." "You're serious about attacking the orbital station?" Greg asked. "Jake, that's suicide. Even if we make it up there, we'd be outnumbered 100 to 1. If those weapons reach Earth, thousands of our people will die," Jake said. "We take the risk now, or we lose everything we've fought for." Over the next 2 days, the resistance moved with purpose. Nathan worked around the clock modifying his EMP devices for space combat. Lisa's forces captured a Council transport ship in a daring raid on a coastal facility. Amy coordinated with Kraz, getting detailed maps of the orbital station's layout and security systems. Jake handpicked 30 fighters for the mission. All volunteers, all understanding they might not come back. Kevin, the young fighter who had been with Jake since the beginning, insisted on joining despite Jake's attempts to keep him safe. "If we're going to die, I'd rather die fighting than hiding," Kevin said. It was hard to argue with that logic. The transport ship lifted off from a hidden airfield at dawn. Jake sat in the cargo bay with his team, checking weapons and equipment one last time. Everyone was nervous, but no one showed it. They had all learned to hide fear behind determined faces. As the ship rose through the atmosphere, Jake looked out a small window. Earth spread out below him, blue and beautiful. Somewhere down there, millions of people were counting on them, counting on him. The orbital station grew larger as they approached. It was a massive structure, 3 miles long, bristling with weapons and docking ports. Council ships moved around it like insects around a hive. "Beginning approach," Lisa said from the pilot's seat. "Council traffic control is hailing us. They're asking for identification codes." "Give them the codes Kraz provided," Jake said. A tense moment passed. Then Lisa smiled. "We're cleared for docking. They think we're a supply run." The battle in orbit lasted 3 days. The sky over Earth burned with the light of dying ships. Debris fell like shooting stars, streaking through the atmosphere and burning up before reaching the ground. Humanity watched from below, unable to do anything but wait and hope. Jake stood in the command center they had established in the mountains, watching reports come in from across the planet. The assault on Geneva had been costly. 2,000 fighters killed, 5,000 wounded, but the biological weapon was destroyed. Executor Ven's confession was spreading across the galaxy. Public opinion was turning against the Archons. "Latest update from the fleet," Amy said, bringing him a data pad. "Liberation forces are holding. Archon ships are being forced back. Kraz reports they've destroyed 60 enemy vessels with minimal losses on our side." "Minimal," Jake repeated. "That still means people died up there. Aliens who decided humanity was worth saving." "They're fighting for more than us," Amy said gently. "They're fighting for every species the Council has oppressed. We just happen to be the ones who finally said enough." Greg entered the room, limping slightly from an injury sustained during the Geneva raid. "Intelligence reports coming in from Liberation Front contacts. Council worlds are in chaos. Three major species have withdrawn their support for the Archons. The Viridians are calling for a complete restructuring of galactic governance. What about Earth? Jake asked. What's our status? Most Council occupation forces have surrendered or retreated off-world, Greg said. We've secured major cities. People are coming out of hiding. For the first time in 15 years, humans control their own planet. It didn't feel real. Jake had spent so long fighting, surviving, running, that the idea of victory seemed impossible. But it was happening. They were winning. On the third day, the Archon fleet broke. The remaining ships scattered, retreating to Council space. Kroz's armada had won decisively. The celebration was brief, though. Everyone knew this was just the beginning. Kroz came down to Earth personally to meet with Jake and the other resistance leaders. They gathered in what used to be the United Nations building in New York. The structure was damaged from years of occupation, but it still stood. A fitting place for new beginnings. You have impressed many across the galaxy, Kroz said, his deep voice filling the room. Your species fought with courage and determination. The Archons believed you would be easily controlled. They were wrong. What happens now? Jake asked. The Council still exists. The Archons still have power. The old Council is finished, Kroz replied. Too many species have seen the truth. We are forming a new governing body, one based on cooperation, not domination. Earth is invited to join as an equal member. Equal? Greg scoffed. After everything that happened, you expect us to just trust another galactic government? I expect you to remain cautious, Kroz said. But humanity cannot survive alone. The galaxy is vast and dangerous. You need allies, and we need your perspective. Your refusal to surrender, your creativity in battle, your determination to be free. These qualities are rare. They make you valuable partners. Jake looked at the other human leaders around the table. They were tired, scarred, and wary. But they were also pragmatic. Kroz was right. Earth couldn't isolate itself. They needed to be part of the larger galaxy, but on their own terms. If we join, it's as equals, Jake said. No more occupation. No more control. We develop our own technology, make our own decisions, live our own lives. Agreed, Kroz said. The new Council will have strict limits on its authority. No member world can be forced into compliance. All decisions require consensus, and the pruning protocol is officially abolished. Those responsible will face justice. Over the following months, the galaxy transformed. The Archons were arrested and put on trial for crimes against countless civilizations. Species that had been oppressed for centuries found their voices. A new galactic assembly formed, with Earth taking its place among the founding members. Jake stepped down from military command. He had been a soldier for too long. It was time for others to lead. He recommended Amy to take over coordination of Earth's defense forces. She accepted, promising to keep humanity safe while building relationships with alien allies. Greg returned to the Pacific Northwest, helping to rebuild communities that had been destroyed during the occupation. He found purpose in construction rather than destruction, teaching young people how to create instead of fight. Dr. Nathan Brooks established a research institute dedicated to advancing human technology. With access to alien knowledge and human creativity, progress exploded. Within a year, humans had developed their own faster-than-light drives. Within 2 years, they were exploring star systems the Council had never reached. Lisa took command of humanity's first deep space exploration fleet, a dozen ships built by human hands using combined human and alien technology. They left Earth to chart unknown regions, carrying a simple message. Humanity was no longer confined to one planet. Jake found himself at loose ends. He had spent 15 years fighting the Council. Now that the fight was over, he wasn't sure what to do with himself. He tried teaching at a military academy, but peace made his lessons feel hollow. He tried writing about the resistance, but putting those memories into words was too painful. One day, 5 years after the liberation, Jake visited a memorial built to honor those who died during the occupation and rebellion. It was a beautiful structure, carved from white stone with thousands of names etched into its surface. He found the names of the 2 fighters who died during the Chicago raid, the 3 who fell taking the orbital station, the hundreds who died in Geneva. As he stood there reading names and remembering faces, he heard children playing nearby. He turned to see a group of kids running through a park beside the memorial. Some were human, Others were clearly alien with different colored skin, extra limbs, or unusual features. They were playing together, laughing and shouting in a mix of languages. One child, a human girl maybe 7 years old, ran up to Jake. "Are you Commander Patterson?" she asked. "Just Jake," he said. Commander Patterson was someone else. "My teacher says you freed Earth," the girl said. "Is that true?" Jake knelt down to her level. "A lot of people freed Earth. I just helped. Can you tell me about it?" she asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. Jake looked at the memorial, then at the playing children, then back at the girl. "Maybe someday. But right now, you should go play with your friends. That's what we fought for, so kids like you could play and be happy." The girl nodded and ran back to her friends. Jake watched them for a while, feeling something settle in his chest. Peace. Real peace. Not the forced quiet of occupation, but the natural calm of freedom. He thought about all the battles, the losses, the fear and pain. He thought about the people who hadn't survived to see this day. They had given everything so that humanity could have a future. And here it was, running around a park, laughing under a blue sky. Jake left the memorial and walked through the city. Buildings were being rebuilt. People were working, trading, living normal lives. Council ships still visited Earth, but now they came as friends and partners, not masters. Humans traveled to other worlds freely, bringing their ideas and culture with them. The galaxy was still dangerous. There were still threats out there, still species that saw humans as primitives or upstarts. But humanity had proven something important. They could defend themselves. They could stand among the stars as equals, and they would never be controlled again. That night, Jake received a message from Amy. She was inviting him to join a new project. Earth was establishing embassies on 50 different worlds, and they needed experienced people who understood both human and alien perspectives. It wasn't fighting, but it was important work. Building bridges instead of tearing down walls, Jake accepted. He was tired of war, but he wasn't ready to stop serving humanity. There was still work to do, still a future to build. The occupation had ended, but the real challenge was just beginning. How would humanity shape itself now that it was free? What kind of civilization would they become? He didn't know the answers. No one did. But for the first time in 15 years, humans had the freedom to find out. Jake looked up at the night sky. The stars seemed brighter now, more welcoming. Each one was a possibility, a place humans might go, people they might meet, wonders they might discover. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of opportunities. Humanity had been knocked down. They had been occupied, controlled, and nearly destroyed. But they got back up. They fought, they won. And now they would take their place among the stars, not as subjects or conquerors, but as free people choosing their own destiny. The age of submission was over. The age of humanity had begun, and whatever came next, whatever challenges or triumphs awaited, humans would face them the same way they had faced the Council, with courage, determination, and an absolute refusal to surrender. Jake smiled and walked home through the peaceful streets. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight Earth was free, and that was enough.